it's Levon. Today is step by step and we are doing a big sign. Normally we're painting furniture, but this is part one of the sign above the door. We're hoping to get this hung next weekend with a grand reopening the following weekend, the first weekend in October. So here's the artist's rendering that we had to supply to the city, and that's kind of what it looked like in my mind and on paper, but the color changed a little bit since. That's the file for the original logo that my son did a long time ago, and we had to submit a building permit to the city so that we could do this sign. There's the truck door that's going to go on it, and it's really cool because they cut out all the weight of it. So they did this at Walters Auto Wrecking. That's in Hollidaysburg, Pennsylvania. They're the nicest people. So this is engineered siding, and that's going to be the base of the sign. These are 4x8 sheets, so two of them end to end would make a 16-foot sign, but we need to cut some off so that it's a 13-foot sign. So that's a modification we had to make from the original one so that the city approved it. Word of caution, always be careful when you're cutting with a saw. Don't do anything that isn't comfortable. I had a little kickback on the saw. I should have just turned around because I'm not left-handed, just turned around and did it the other way. So just be cautious. I am using Dixie Belle's Pure Ocean here, and I'm painting the siding, and it has a wood grain in it, so I'm doing a dry brush. And I always tell you when you're dry brushing just to be cautious that you don't put all of the concentration of paint in a patterned area. Like, don't always start in the same place, because otherwise it'll look like it's all going in a line. But we're going to soften it up just a tad. So my original truck logo, after I went to the truck logo, always had a ring of turquoise around it. So my landlord decided to paint our buildings before I started this sign process. So the color is about the color of the siding. So that's why the painting now. So again, I'm just doing a dry brush, and it really went pretty quickly to get both of these pieces painted. But after I finish painting it, and you'll see it here in a second how it looks, I decide to go a step further, and I'm going to do mist it so that it reactivates the water in the paint, and it's just going to kind of make a little bit more of a softer look. So there's what it looked like when I got done. But here's what's going to happen next. I mist it and kind of blend it all together so that it really just softens it, but it still has a very rustic look, worn, weathered finish, which I really like. I'm also going to be adding some glaze to it so that it gets an even further distressed or weathered look. I just love painting. You can create any kind of feel that you want through paint. I like artistry painting the best. Really allows you to express yourself. So here we are weeding. My friend Dawn, who works at the store, made a file. She made, on her silhouette machine, she made a stencil for me. I gave her the file, and she worked her little heart out, converting the file from a JPEG to an SVG, then to something else. But here we are weeding it. And by the way, today is Dawn's birthday. It's Dawn Gardini, and she works in our shop, and she does sisters signs and such. So happy birthday, Dawn. I really appreciate you spending your birthday morning with me working on this sign. So what weeding is removing the part of the stencil that you'll be painting through. So anything in this case that I wanted to be white is what we're removing. You can also use these for stickers, and if we were doing that, then we would be removing the opposite pieces. So it's a tricky little process, and people do it all the time, but this one's pretty detailed. So I really handed to her that she was able to make this happen. And it was kind of fun working on it too. It was definitely fun working on it. So Dawn's got it down to a science. You see how she puts the little pieces on the back of her hand so she can work pretty quickly. And I'm trying that technique too, but I'm not as good at it as Dawn is. So you can see why they call it weeding, because you're just weeding out what you don't want. So we're almost done with the weeding. So I'm not sure if I told you the story as to how that got to be my logo. So I needed a background picture for my first website, and took a picture of the dining room windows, and that kind of became the logo. So I cut the stencil into 2 pieces per Dawn's direction. So my son Max did this logo. As I said, it was my first original one. So the story of the windows, we had tenants in our house, and they weren't really taking care of the house that well. So we were afraid the stained glass that actually was in built-in cabinets was going to get broken. So we took it over to our house, which ironically fit really well into our family room windows. And then when we moved back, because I lost my job at AT&T in 2010, and this is the whole reason why I started my business at that point in time, but we moved back, and the first place those stained glass windows went was in my dining room windows. Now they're back into the original built-ins that they came from. So now Dawn is putting contact paper, clear contact paper, on the stencil. That is so that you can pull it off of the back of the stencil. So you're able to position it on and then put it on the piece that you want to stencil. So she's working with it here, and here it comes off of the backing. So if you didn't have that backing, you wouldn't be able to run it through the machine. It would stick to the machine. So this process does not take 5 minutes by any means. It's a process. Other ways you can make a stencil, you could actually burn a stencil using a stencil cutter, which is actually kind of like the same kind of thing that you use to like burn wood. But this is a pretty intricate stencil, so doing it this way was probably the best way to get all of that detail. So we continue to work, and Dawn cautions then to make sure that once you get it peeled, that you don't fold it back on itself, because that would be a shame after all that work. So now we are heading over to the door to position it. I'm actually being risky and putting the tripod on the door so you can see. And Dawn and I worked together to position the stencil on the door. And after a few tries, somehow we managed to get it straight. You can see there's a few little pieces like on the G and the O that came out, but they're easy to replace. This is a 16 by 16 square on this door. So you can see I start to smooth it out and Dawn says, no, no, you can read our hands. She uses her little squeegee. We're doing a little repositioning here. Thankfully it comes up. That side straight, so she's able to kind of line it up. And we straighten it out a bit. It looks good. And we're committed. So now what she's doing is using that contact paper to stick the stencil on the item. So now we're on to stenciling. So I am doing sort of a pounce technique as opposed to a swirl, because if you do a swirl, you do run the risk of getting the paint underneath the stencil. So I'm also getting almost all of the paint off of the stencil to also minimize the chances of that happening. You can see on the G and on the O, we replaced those little pieces so that the letters are right. So it takes a couple minutes here to stencil. Again, you're not using very much paint when you stencil. You don't want to do that, because if you use too much paint, it'll run under the stencil and then you won't have a crisp image. I did have one little section when we peeled the stencil up where the L is that I had a little run, but I was able to easily fix that. So there it is, we have it pulled up, and now we weed off the little pieces of the stencil that remain for the details. So what a process, huh? But I think it turned out just beautiful. I'm thrilled with it. That logo to me looks better than it ever did. So nice to be able to have that history of it. And the last one, the center of the flower. And Dawn and I give each other a low high five there. And we stop for a selfie. And there it is. So you have to stay tuned next week so you see the exciting conclusion. So there's what the logo looks like on the truck door on the new logo. So we always have to remember the old one. Hey, I want to thank you so much for watching today, and I hope you learned something, and I hope you look forward to seeing next week's. And also visit on lavintagedecor.company, and on Instagram we're LaVintage Decor, and on Facebook we're LaVintage Decor Altoona. Stay well.